Oh shit, here comes Pac-Man.
Pac-Man is a game that needs no introduction. Released in 1980, it was a fantastic success, and it's still a lot of fun today. Any successful game obviously means sequels, spin-offs, and copycats of course, and Pac-Man was certainly no exception. We got Mrs. Pac-Man, Pac-Man Plus, Super Pac-Man, Baby Pac-Man, Professor Pac-Man, Pac-and-Pal, Junior Pac-Man, Pac-Land, Pac-Mania. Okay, so they milked poor Pac-Man completely dry. But the question is, if Pac-Man is so great, why isn't there a Pac-Man 2? Well, turns out there is. Obviously, it's the title of the video. You may have even seen it or played it yourself, either on the Genesis or Super Nintendo. And yet, I don't see anyone talk about this game. So why is that? Is Pac-Man 2 The New Adventures a classic hidden gem? Or is it a quick and jarring cure for Pac-Man fever? Let's find out, shall we?
Pac-Man 2!
The game starts off with a nifty little intro showing the characters, and then we get to the title screen. Starting a new game will throw us right into the tutorial. Shoot stuff with B, fire power pellets with A, tell Pac-Man to look around with C, pretty simple stuff. Right away you can tell Pac-Man 2 The New Adventures plays nothing like the original. It's got Pac-Man, power pellets, ghosts, sure, but there's no maze to speak of here, and you don't even control Pac-Man yourself. Pac-Man's got to find items, avoid obstacles, and solve problems. Only issue is, Pac-Man's a fucking idiot. Luckily, thanks to the Character Guidance Interface, trademark copyright all rights reserved, you as some sort of Pac god can help Pac-Man on his journey by shooting pellets at enemies, obstacles, items, and even Pac-Man himself. Or you could just murder him. If it's starting to feel like this isn't really a sequel at all, that's because it kind of isn't. In Japan, Pac-Man 2 is simply called Hello Pac-Man, meaning the 2 was probably added just to sell more copies, similar to what they did to Yoshi's Island. It's not even really a game, the box describes it as an interactive cartoon. But hey, no matter what they call it, it's an adventure with Pac-Man, and I'm along for the ride. Let's talk presentation real quick. Pac-Man 2 The New Adventures really nails that cartoon art style even when limited to 16 bits. The animations are super detailed too. I mean, just look at how many unique sprites there are just for Pac-Man alone. For an SNES and Genesis game, the animation's stellar, which makes sense considering they wanted to go for that cartoon feel. Pac-Man is just so expressive. I can't praise the music the same way though. Don't get me wrong, no track is awful, but few songs stuck out to me and most I forgot as soon as another started to play. Since the game was released on both SNES and Genesis, they both have their own soundtrack, so some songs might be better on one system or the other. Either way, the music didn't ever detract from the game, it just didn't quite add anything special either. Alright, now the tutorial's out of the way. So we start off here in Pac-Man's house with Pac-Man getting shouted at by Mrs. Pac-Man to go get milk. Not exactly the most exciting goal, but hey, it's only the first mission. Pac-Man, are you okay, pal? Do I need to call a hotline for you? Seriously, Pac-Man is always super depressed whenever Mrs. Pac-Man asks him to do anything. She won't even give us a bottle either, we have to go find one ourselves. Luckily, someone has been nice enough to put up signs showing Pac-Man, and only Pac-Man, where the specific bottle of milk he needs is. It's not too hard of a task to complete. You'll have to use the slingshot to get rid of some obstacles, but there's not really any danger. Just bury this farmer in hay, get Pac-Man to look at the bottle, knock it off by shooting the crow, easy peasy. While the first level isn't super exciting, it's quick to complete if you want to move on, but there is still a lot to explore around the town. I found some secrets, beat some ghosts, broke into someone's house, and sucked at the original Pac-Man for a bit. While I was exploring, I actually managed to find a game cartridge. Apparently, if you can find all three, you can play Pac Jr. in the arcade. Pretty cool incentive to explore, actually. I also picked up an ID card from Ghosts, which I assume is going to be for later. Spending time in the beginning area was neat, but honestly the interactions you can have aren't as in-depth as some other point-and-click classics like the Humongous Entertainment games. It feels a bit barren at times. And while navigating around is usually pretty simple, Not being able to fully control Pac-Man means he'll usually either get himself into trouble or get pissed off, meaning he won't listen as well and then he'll just end up getting into more trouble. I got stuck on this damn hot dog segment for so long. I could not convince the bastard to ignore the hot dog stand, and he just kept getting mauled by the same cat over and over again. No matter what I hit or what I did, it just resulted in a restart. I'm hoping this isn't a sign of frustrations to come. Alright, Mission 2. We've got to take the rope way up to the mountains to find a pink mountain flower for Lucy's birthday. I think Lucy was that person, I guess, whose house I broke into earlier. Up in the mountains, there are a lot more obstacles that will kill you, forcing you to reload the current screen, and most of them are pretty time sensitive. I started climbing up and managed to find a hang glider. Hey, just like the box art. The hang gliding portion is one of a few minigames in Pac-Man 2, with the goal being avoiding hazards, ghosts, and reaching the goal to progress. It's a bit hard to react sometimes without already knowing what's coming next, since there is a bit of a delay between telling Pac-Man to go higher and him actually going up, but he's still more in control than usual. If you die anywhere in this section, it's all the way back to the start, so it can feel pretty damn slow after a while. Finally, we reach the end. We've got some vines to pull, so I started trying to tell Pac-Man to investigate for me, but I've run into an issue that pops up a ton in this game. Pac-Man listens seemingly at random, and some of his actions are entirely based upon his current mood. Meaning, even if you know what to do, you might not be able to do it if Pac-Man either doesn't feel like listening or doesn't have the right emotion to succeed. For example, we have to use a pulling machine here to lift the boulder blocking the path. Pac-Man hits some buttons, and nothing happens. He ended up getting angry, so I tried it again. This time he kicked it, but we still can't pass. Turns out what you need to do is get him to be angry, but not too angry, so he'll decide to punch it instead. I just had to wait until Pac-Man felt like progressing. I had a similar issue just trying to collect the mountain flower. No matter how many times I shot the flowers or told him to look around, Pac-Man would just ignore them constantly. Eventually, out of sheer luck, he picked them up.
That just makes no fucking sense. I mean, it's just bullshit. Fuck. Oh my.
After completing the main task, we managed to find a minecart and found another minigame. This wasn't as bad as the hang glider section though, as one of the options was making Pac-Man go faster, so it wasn't too much of a penalty to catch up whenever you failed. At the end, we've got another ID card and another cartridge. Fantastic. Time to head back and get these flowers to Lucy. I've only completed about half the missions at this point, but I'm starting to get worn out. Trying to control Pac-Man and get him to do what you want is a real pain in the ass most of the time. But it does let you see all sorts of animations. There is some fun in seeing every interaction Pac-Man has with the background objects, or how you can kill him in some amusing ways. Sure, that might sound cruel, but hey, Pac-Man's no angel here either. He can be a straight up dick sometimes. He'll steal other people's mail, scream at his dog, and he straight up maims this guy.
I should have left you on that street corner where you were standing. But you didn't!
Time for our third mission. The ghosts have taken a more direct approach this time, stealing Pac Jr.'s guitar and hiding out somewhere in the city. Once again, Pac is on the case. Now that we can go to the city, we have another pretty large area to explore, with some hidden locations as well. I managed to find the final cartridge on the rooftop, and now I can play Pac Jr. at the arcades. Anything to take a break from Pac-Man 2 itself. Eventually I found the sewer and a secret lab, but I'm missing the last ID card. Eventually I realized after taking out every ghost and exhausting what felt like every option that I probably missed something due to Pac-Man not acting how he was supposed to. Sure enough, the security guard, who seems to disappear and reappear at random by the way, are actually the ghosts in disguise. I'm not sure why it took so long for Pac-Man to decide to discover this when I tried to get him to investigate several times already. I tossed him a power pellet, and Super Pac-Man took care of the ghosts and got back the guitar. One train ride later, and that's mission 3 done. I spent so much time backtracking and having to go through areas because Pac-Man just refused to listen to me. He kept going to the sewers, where the only way out seemed to be going through the entire lab. every minute felt like an hour. But at least we've only got one final mission left. Now things are starting to get interesting. The ghosts are flying around the city and stealing chewed gum to make some sort of monster, and the Ghost Witch herself has issued Pac-Man a challenge to stop her in her secret lair. I'm pretty relieved I already have 2 of those 3 ID cards. Pac-Man 2 has been surprisingly draining so far. We go up to the rooftops and snag the last one. After journeying through the factory several times because I kept having to refill on power pellets, since the final boss requires them, I used the ID cards and the secret code from the factory, and now we're ready to take on the... oh god. Anyway, I struggled to figure out what I was doing wrong here, but like most other instances, it just randomly seemed to work instead of me solving anything or trying anything new. What I believe you're supposed to do is shoot the monster's arms so Pac-Man won't get grabbed or slam into the wall, avoiding them, but sometimes I wasn't sure if I was actually affecting anything. The main goal is to hit him in the face repeatedly while Super Pac-Man takes care of the ghost. Eventually the monster falls, the Ghost Witch flees, and the town thanks Pac-Man for his hard work. And with that, Pac-Man 2 is over. But that's not all the game has to offer. First off, you can of course play the original Pac-Man inside various arcades around town, and if you collect all 3 cartridges, you can even play Pac Jr. Not related to the game Junior Pac-Man, but a brand new title specifically made for the Genesis version of Pac-Man 2. After the credits roll though, you'll get a special password to unlock time trials, which will let you play through 2 versions of the gliding and minecart minigames. Now they'll keep track of your time and they've got collectibles to grab. They were actually pretty damn challenging, but not engaging or interesting enough for more than a few tries at each course before shutting the game off. So, that was Pac-Man 2: The New Adventures. It's certainly a wild departure from the original, that's for sure. I like seeing a more fleshed out world for Pac-Man as Namco tries to evolve the series for the newer video game landscape. The presentation's great, music's decent, but the gameplay seems to fall apart and Pac-Man 2 as a whole comes crashing down because of it. It's frustrating at worst and boring at best. Sometimes it's not a matter of if you solve the puzzle, it's whether or not Pac-Man will listen or just blatantly ignore objectives or interact with something in an incorrect way. Managing his moods to perform different actions sounds good on paper, but in practice it makes the game feel even more out of my control. If I could maybe shoot Pac-Man to make him angry consistently, or use another button to make him happy again, I think the game would feel less random. Let me take hot dogs with me to cheer him up or something. Any extra amount of control would be great. And lastly, if I shoot something with a slingshot, I want Pac-Man to interact with it. No question. There are just too many instances where you know what you have to do, but cannot convince him to get with the program. I would have also appreciated more background elements to interact with. Point-and-click adventure games reward curiosity, and while Pac-Man 2 has some instances of this, most areas feel a bit bland, and you spend a lot of time just waiting and watching Pac-Man travel around. I get that it's supposed to be an interactive cartoon, but watching him stumble around is rarely entertaining. At the end of the day, I think I'd only ever recommend this game if you want to play the original Pac-Man on the Genesis or SNES. And even then, there are plenty of alternatives that won't require you to shout at your screen and wait until Pac-Man walks all the way to the arcade through various distractions. This wasn't the end of Pac-Man, of course, it's his 40th anniversary this year after all, but it certainly feels like a misstep to me. I'm curious to see how other Pac-Man games afterwards have changed. I'd love to give some of the other Pac-Man titles like the Pac-Man World series a shot. Thanks for watching all the way through. Now that I'm finished with Pac-Man 2, I'm honestly not sure what I'll review next. If you've got any suggestions, feel free to let me know in the comments down below. As always, if you liked the video, consider subscribing and leaving a like. It really goes a long way to helping the channel out. Thanks again, and have a good one.
Please have mercy on me.
I'll do better than that. I'll have mustard on you.